Alrighty, well, welcome everybody. I see at least one person still connecting to audio, but I'll start talking real quick. Welcome to Santa Barbara Audubon's May program. I'm Aaron Kreisberg, one of your program chairs, along with Emily, who you might see later. And just if you should have been muted when you came in, but if you are not muted, please try to make sure you're muted. And then the chat function for questions, go ahead and put questions in there and we will get to them at the end. And I'm over to our president, Janice, for chapter announcements. Thanks.
Good evening. Welcome to our last program of the year, and thank everybody for zooming in. So announcements, we're going to have our annual membership meeting and picnic after a 2-year hiatus. It will be on June 11th at Stowe Grove Park, Area 3 from 3 to 5 p.m. Please bring finger food to share and your own beverages. We encourage you to go green and bring your own plates and cutlery, and come vote for next year's board slate. Our regular birding events will be on break from June through August, but we are pleased to announce that in late summer, there will be 2 trips led by expert birder Nick Letheby, and please check our website for details. May was a busy month with Bird Month events at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden and the North Campus Open Space grand opening, where we celebrated the opening of the Mesa Trail out to the Audubon Overlook. So now we can get out there and go birding. Thank you to everyone who volunteered to help or came out and stopped by our tables at both places. And you'll read more about these collaborations. They went very well in our June letter. Speaking of which, our newsletter team worked very hard to get the next issue of El Tecolote to print subscribers in early June. The electronic version in color will be available very soon on our website. So please keep checking that. And finally, many thanks to Aaron and Emily Kreisberg for co-chairing our programs this year. It's been wonderful to have their talent and their spark, and we wish them well as they head into the next chapter of their lives. So now I'll turn it over to Aaron to introduce this evening's program speaker.
Thanks, Janice. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Jayden Washington Samuels tonight. And Jayden's talk is going to focus on experiences in the field with hummingbirds and shorebirds, and he will answer questions such as how can I photograph these animals and how can I observe them ethically? And he will also cover his opportunities he's had at the LA Zoo and the Zoo Magnet program he attends. Jayden is a 17-year-old Jamaican-American wildlife photographer and animal enthusiast who specializes in knowledge of birds and reptiles. He runs a California-based wildlife photography account called Pictile Photography, and he mainly posts his best bird shots he gets on his many outings. His love for animals shows in the amazing opportunity he gets to experience, such as going to a Zoo Magnet program, being a student volunteer at the LA Zoo. A quick story on how Jayden ended up as our program speaker. Our co-conservation chair, Jessie Altstad, actually ran into him out at Mar Mesa, and it was her suggestion that we invite him. And I'm really appreciative that he was interested. And Jayden's been really fun to talk to before the program, and I'm excited to get to hear what he has to say tonight. So with that, I will pass it over to Jayden.
Okay, so hi everybody. I'm going to kind of repeat a little bit of what Aaron said, but so to start, my full name is Jayden Washington Samuels. I'm a second-gen Jamaican-American wildlife photographer and birder who resides and primarily explores the greater Los Angeles area. So to go on to the next slide here, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. So going on to the next slide here. So I post my birding adventures and photos on my Instagram at Pictile Photography, and I do occasionally post some rare finds on my iNaturalist account, which is at Jamaican-Naturalist. I've done wildlife photography of all sorts for around, I want to say 4 years now, and I've taken 2 formal photography courses. One of which was like a wildlife photography oriented course a few years ago, and one recently was offered at my high school that I decided to take just to broaden my sort of, knowledge and experiences. So an awesome opportunity that I just had was my LA Times article. So basically, what that was kind of about was being myself and my experience being like a black birder in the Los Angeles area. People really don't associate like people of color and specifically Black people with the outdoors. And I would say I'm extremely a strong advocate for bringing Black people into the natural setting, and my advocacy rewarded me with an awesome LA Times feature as of late. So here is that feature. So I'm very excited and happy that this is an experience I got to have. And so if you are interested in the article, or you just want to share it with somebody who you think would like it, let me know. I will send the link in probably after the talk is done. So just to kind of like take some excerpts from the article does talk about we did go out on like a birding walk sort of with the LA Times people to sort of give them like an idea of what type of people we were. There was multiple Black birders there. And so the article does start off with me, which is amazing. And it describes me as a part of a small but passionate Black birding community in Los Angeles, which is true. It is true that a lot of times I do bird alone. I'm not able to interact with a lot of these Black birders beforehand. So it was very awesome to finally see others like me in like this sort of very interesting hobby that we all have. The pandemic sort of sparked like this, like kind of a boost of Black people and people of color into nature as a whole. So I was kind of one of those people. I definitely started getting into it a lot more during the pandemic because I felt being cooped up inside was just not the way to go. So I went out into nature a lot more, and that's really how I started to really get into birding and wildlife photography and all those things. Um, so the way that I really got into like my love for animals is as a kid, I was obsessed with National Geographic books and National Geographic documentaries. And even on my bookshelf over there that you can't see, I have tons and tons and tons of magazines that I just would read and indulge in. And I'd beg my mom for more after I was done with them. And I just really, really, really sort of enjoyed like the idea of like being involved and being like a part of like animals, like animal conservation and animal like well-being and just animal education. So I really educated myself as a young child. And now that I'm a high schooler, a senior in high school, I got to work with a special pilot program, which is the Zoo Magnet. This is in the Los Angeles area at the LA Zoo. What this is it's a pilot program, the first of its kind in the United States, and it works with LUSD, which is the public high school district of Los Angeles. And what we do is we have a mirror campus of another high school called North Hollywood High School, and we're on a separate campus, and we have exclusive classes, exclusive experiences. We have a definitely um, like a very forward position on different science issues. We have exclusive science classes such as like zoology, animal behavior, fundamental animal studies, and then animal husbandry, which is what seniors get to experience like myself. So going into that, animal husbandry is a course where I get to mirror a keeper at the LA Zoo. It's a very awesome experience where you sort of follow this keeper around. They educate you on the animal string that you're in, which could be either one animal or as up to 12 different species of animals. And you basically get to help with feeding the animals, enriching the animals, cleaning the enclosures, interacting with them occasionally, depending on the animal. It's a very amazing experience, and I think it definitely prepared me for my future. And what I want to go into is either ecology or environmental science. So it definitely did prepare me for that, and it did kind of show it solidified my interest and sort of like my love for the wildlife and animals. So that was awesome. So I do have like a sort of map here. Let's see. So I'm really hoping you guys can see this. So this is kind of a map of my favorite birding locations, and most of them are in the Los Angeles area, but there are a few in the Santa Barbara Carpinteria area, and then there's a few further down in Huntington Beach and a few further upstate. So I'm going to just kind of go through this because I want to, if you guys are ever down in the Los Angeles area, these are awesome locations to, visit. And I do have, like, as you'll see here, I have kind of like my favorite species that I've seen here. So my first location and my favorite location personally is Malibu Lagoon State Beach in Malibu, California. It's definitely my favorite place to bird, mainly due to the abundance and diversity of shorebirds that reside here. And my favorite species that I've personally seen at this location are the Western snowy plovers, the semi-palmated plovers, and California least terns. They're very abundant depending on the season, and a lot of them are in very not easy to spot places, but they are in such an abundance, they're pretty easy to spot. So I love going down there to photograph them. My second location is also in Malibu, Point Dume. This location is very awesome to bird, and it's very awesome to see a variety of marine mammals here, like seals, sea lions, whales, and dolphins are a very common sight. My favorite species at this location are black oyster catchers, Pacific loons, and eared crabes. So I really recommend going to Malibu if you ever come down to the Los Angeles area. They're very, very beautiful, picturesque locations with tons and tons of birds. Going a little bit further back, we have King Gillette's Ranch in Calabasas, California. This location is the kind of the manor and land that the Sir Gillette owned, and he basically donated it to the Mountain Conservation and Research Authority for the public to kind of be able to experience the Santa Monica Mountains. And I love this location for its diversity. Being in the middle of the Santa Monica Mountains is just a very beautiful location. In the spring, it's covered in mustard flowers and just green rolling hills, and it's beautiful. And a lot of migrants stop here as a rest stop. So there's a lot of different like bird baths and bird feeders around just to like, get them recuperated and ready to go again. My favorite species at this location are California quail, Lewis woodpeckers, and red-shouldered hawks. Almost every time I go, I see the Lewis woodpeckers and red-shouldered hawks, and that's a really awesome sight, and I love that. My next location here is Chatsworth Oaks Park in Chatsworth, California. This is like an awesome mix of like an open space and forested parks, as like honestly a lot of the parks in Los Angeles are kind of like this. I'm not sure how it is in Santa Barbara, but um, it's an amazing spot to be during the migratory seasons like fall and spring. My favorite species here are yellow-rumped warblers, white-breast nuthatches, and black and white warblers. Last time I was here, which was back last year in spring, I believe, I think the number was like 80 yellow-rumped warblers just flying around the entire area, and it was very awesome to see that. My next favorite spot is O'Melveny Park in Granada Hills. This is it's a gateway park. So there's like a park and then it gateways into like a series of hiking trails and a mountainous area. It's another wonderful location for warblers to rest because it's kind of adjacent to Bear Divide, which is where a lot of warblers come in. My favorite species that I've seen at this location are cerulean warblers, yellow warblers, and lazuli buntings. I see a lot when I'm down there during the certain seasons. My next spot is Sepulveda Basin Wildlife Reserve. This spot is, I'd say, pretty well known for a lot of Angelinos because it's a really big park. It's one of the biggest in the world. And basically it's like this giant open space and there's two lakes. There's Woodley Lake and then there's the Sepulveda Basin, like kind of like watershed area. It has a lot of rarities. I've noticed every time I've gone down there, I've seen something new and I always find that awesome. My favorite species at this location are probably the yellow-breasted chats, northern cardinals, and green herons. Those are very common down there for sure during the right season. The next location I'm going to cover is Griffith Park. This is a very well-known park for a lot of people in Southern California. I actually go to school at this location, so I get to see tons and tons of birds like every single day. And so it's very awesome because this is where the Zoo Magnet and the LA Zoo are located. And so my favorite bird species, sorry, that I've seen here are barn owls, scaly-breasted munia, and ospreys. I see the ospreys almost every morning, which is amazing. Another good spot I would say is Silver Lake Reservoir. This is a little bit further to the right-hand side of Riffle Park. It's only about a mile away. They have a very like vast, like different sections of meadows that surround the reservoir, kind of to break up like the concrete basin that's there. And there's tons and tons and tons of rarities here. So I've seen Lucy's warblers, I've seen Phenopepla, and a bunch of different types of hummingbirds, like Allen's hummingbirds, black-chinned hummingbirds, just tons of hummingbirds there. So kind of moving a little bit away from the Los Angeles area, we have Ontario, California, which is pretty far from Santa Barbara, but I always love going to Ontario because there's tons and tons and tons of birds of prey down there. So the this was the first time I ever got to see a burrowing owl, and it's very awesome to see down there. There's abundance of locations kind of spread around Ontario where there's like big open fields, and then there's electric fencing surrounding it, so people don't, intrude on the burrowing owl's habitat, and you can go see burrowing owls down there, and I love that. Kind of going down a little bit further, Bolsa Chica. A lot of people I know have heard of this spot. It's a very famous location. I really think this is probably the best birding location in Southern California. It's pretty far from me, so I don't get to go that often, but when I do, it's just always a fun time. Some bird species that I've seen there that I really enjoy seeing are belted kingfishers, elegant terns, and American avocets. Those are always amazing. So moving up to the Santa Barbara Carpinteria area here, Carpinteria Seal Sanctuary. This is one of actually the first places I ever went birding. So it's kind of sentimental to me, but the shorebirds here are just amazing. I always see definitely like a different type of shorebirds up there than in Malibu Lagoon because it's just far enough. So down there, I mean up there, sorry, I see spotted sandpipers, black turnstones, and wandering tattlers every so often. So that's always awesome to see. And my final location, which is in Santa Barbara, is Andre Clark Bird Refuge. The first time I went, I've only been once. I got a ton of lifers there, so I really like the location. I got a black skimmer and scaly-breasted munia there for the first time, so I really enjoyed that day. And obviously, there's tons and tons and tons of hummingbirds, like Anna's hummingbirds down there. So just to share some of my favorite locations. Okay, so kind of moving into my main topic for the night. I'm gonna cover like kind of some behaviors of hummingbirds, and then like kind of getting into like photographing them and like observing them also. So just to start, hummingbird behavior. So as you guys know, we have tons and tons of hummingbirds here in Southern California, and in my opinion, they're extremely aggressive towards each other. They're very territorial over food and sometimes perch locations, and they constantly fight or chase each other like out of their like sort of claimed territory that they set up for the day. And as a photographer, you can actually use this to your advantage. So what I normally do is I set up right like adjacent or near a spot where I see the hummingbirds constantly flying to or fighting over. And so whether this is like an artificial hummingbird feeder or a natural flower tree or shrub, hummingbirds really will often like claim a perch close to the food source is what I've noticed. So what I often do, and a tip for all of you, is before you even like attempt to shoot or observe these birds, you should really scan the area to look for this sort of common perch, because they really do pick one perch or two perches or three perches in like a sort of area, and they just keep flying back to them, guarding them, and then just sitting there and resting while they're like in between food breaks. So I think it's a wonderful way to really spot them while flying and while perching. And so camera settings. So for hummingbirds, they fly very fast. Their wings beat like I think 52 beats per second or something crazy like that. And so your shutter speed is going to have to be pretty high for that, but that's not always the case. I normally personally don't go below like a shutter speed of 1/500 for hummingbirds, because obviously it's going to be really hard to capture something flying and moving at a shutter speed so low. But sometimes if the lighting's not always there, or if I'm going for like a more like the wing effect, I'm not going for like a perfectly frozen wing, I'm going for like a blurred wing, I will lower my shutter speed to around that area. And if I'm really trying to freeze like the motion of like the wing perfectly in time, I go as high as possible. Highest I normally go is 1/4000, just to because just so I don't have to pump up my ISO too much. But around like in that range, I would say is like definitely like the perfect areas to like keep your shutter speed at when shooting hummingbirds, in my opinion. So that's definitely what I would recommend if you are getting into it. And just to move on here. Another great way to sort of see hummingbirds is to create like a hummingbird garden or sanctuary in your own backyard or patio. So I have something small in my front yard where I just have a hummingbird feeder, and we're in the process of getting like a bubbler. But um, basically what this can do is that it creates like, it's an excellent way to want to attract hummingbirds, of course, and then it also attracts other native California species like lizards, snakes, bees, a lot of things that are not endangered but vulnerable that really need like these sort of native habitats to be brought back. And just doing your part and having like that little piece of that in your front yard, backyard, patio is just an excellent way to, you know, one, observe these birds, and two, give back to the animals and to the land that you live on. So, you know, obviously not everyone has the ability to garden or kind of create like this sort of environment in their yard. So if that's not the case, you know, you can do kind of what I have, where I have a hummingbird feeder, and I'm in the process of getting a bubbler, and that honestly attracts tons and tons of hummingbirds and other birds to your property. They love the flowers. Sometimes they'll take some of the, like if you have like certain types of flowers, they'll take some of it as nesting material, or they'll perch on it or even nest in it. And the bubbler is always there because birds love bathing and cleaning themselves and drinking water. So it's just like an excellent way to attract birds to your yard. I will say a lot of people do kind of mess this up, where you don't want to use like the dyed red nectars for sure when you're doing something like this, because it's not necessarily like terrible for hummingbirds, but it's not good for them. Making your own nectar, or buying completely clear, no preservative nectar from like your local birding shop, if you have that, is definitely an excellent way to kind of go around that issue. So, and if you're kind of looking into like the plant idea, there are some alternatives, like native plant alternatives to the hummingbird feeder. So some really good ones are big berry manzanitas, chaparral currant, and fuchsia flowered gooseberry. I will have this list in the chat after if you guys do want it, so I will send that. But and then for the spring, you're going to want to have black sage, live forever succulents, and coyote mint. Those are always very awesome to have. We actually have a school garden at the Zoo Magnet, and we have all these plants there. So that's how I kind of know what kind of plants attract the hummingbirds. And then for summer, scarlet monkey flower and California fuchsia is just another excellent series of plants that you can have to attract hummingbirds during every season. They're really active. So going on to sort of ethics on hummingbirds, I would definitely say they come into play when you're starting to disturb the hummingbirds while observing them or photographing them. This can normally happen if you get too close to them on purpose, and just generally disturbing them by just your presence. You can normally tell when a bird sees you and does not want you to come any closer, because if you go like a few feet closer, it's going to fly off and go somewhere else, and you won't be able to see the bird. And it does stress out the bird. And on top of that, it can even cause the bird to be predated on because it's focused on you and not any sort of other predators around the area. So, you know, keeping your distance and making sure you're not, you know, distracting the bird or like purposely disturbing the bird is just something all wildlife photographers and birders should definitely keep in mind. Another thing I would say is just an absolute no is trying to observe or photograph an active hummingbird nest. I personally think that it'll cause the mother to flee the birds, and I've seen it actually where the mother just ends up not coming back sometimes because it's too scared to kind of go back after it's been disturbed a few times or one time. And on top of that, actually, I've even seen like photographers put like camera setups on trees watching sort of hummingbird nests, and I personally think that's a complete no. Just kind of obstructing the area around or just making it easier for something like a crow or raven to spot is just something you really don't want to be doing when it comes to photographing or observing these birds. And I do actually believe, like on top of that, actually, it's illegal to mess with or tamper with or move nesting bird nests in the state of California. So it's just not a very good idea. And just to respect them, because we love birds here. So here's my hummingbird portfolio from the past year. These are one of my favorite birds to photograph. I love a lot of the areas near my home, like have a lot of spots or like hummingbird feeders like in the park. So it's really easy to spot these and to get really good shots of them, as you can see. So here's some four of what I think are my favorite shots from the past year. And then here's another section of four of my favorite shots. These are taken in a variety of locations, but all of the locations that these are taken at are actually listed in the Padlet I showed you guys the map earlier. So if you guys do end up wanting that link for if you're ever down here, if you are down here already, I will send that later in the chat. And yeah, so moving on a little bit to shorebirds. Photographing, I'm going to kind of cover photographing, observing shorebirds again, like I did with hummingbirds, and then key tips and tricks to improving your shorebird photography, and then a short but very important ethics talk on specifically shorebirds. So to start, shorebirds are a staple must-see bird here in California, and the diversity we have in like the varying shorebird habitats is honestly beautiful to see and photograph. Shorebirds, in my opinion, are the easiest and simply just the best birds to admire and photograph. I love them so much. This is for two main reasons though. One, you don't have to like break your neck or look like by looking straight up for them normally. And on top of that, you don't really have to memorize bird calls to identify shorebirds, because the beach and like the sort of like coastal dune areas, like you'll spot them, and then that's how you'll more like identify them rather than their calls. But of course, obviously, they do make certain calls that you can identify. I think that we're very lucky here in California. We have a very wide variety because of our Pacific Ocean, and and the abundance of them in one single area, depending on the season, is just so awesome to see. And and you can also see like how distinct they are and how they're basically adapted to the individual niches that they all fulfill. So in this slide here, you can kind of see the difference between a whimbrel and a willet, where one has like a shorter with straighter beak, because what it's doing is it's kind of wafting in the sand for sand crabs and other different things it'll eat, and whereas the whimbrel is kind of picking its beak in between rocks to get like different little crabs and things. So it's a very awesome adaptational difference there. So my first tip, and probably the most important tip that's the most widely recommended to beginner wildlife and bird photographers, is to get eye level with your subject. I would say that this isn't just shorebird specific. Getting eye level with any bird or any animal that you're photographing is always the best way. But for shorebirds, I will say that's the best way to take your photos to like the next level. So basically what this does is that you kind of get to compose your shot completely differently than normally like you would with like a bird in a tree or an animal like in like an elevated or just a harder to reach position, because shorebirds are normally on the floor. So by getting eye level with them, you basically you get to compose your image in a way like more unique and more like a more not abstract, like a more like solid and more like consistent way, I would say. So in these two pictures, there's a semi-palmated plover. The environment here was very muddy, but I still got eye level by basically crouching down and putting my camera as low as possible while flipping the screen up, just so I can get the shot. And then on the next picture there is a snowy plover at Malibu Lagoon, where I got eye level with it, just so that the sands, what's in the background, not necessarily the sky or the ocean water. Because sometimes if you have the sky or the ocean water in the background, it can mess up your lighting or blow out the image entirely. So by doing this, it's basically almost guaranteeing you'll get a better image in general. So on top of getting low, there's other reasons for why you want to be low for shorebirds. Is shorebirds are less scared of you and your equipment if you're on like lower to the ground, because it's harder for you to move, and I feel like they kind of understand that a little bit. And so what it does is that it just makes them feel comfortable. You should always stay pretty far from shorebirds, but in most situations, they're gonna get really comfortable with you if you're just laying there, because they're gonna, wander around and eventually get to you, which is kind of the next tip here. You want to predict their natural behavior. So shorebirds, as like a whole here, what they'll do is they'll find a location where they want to feed, and they'll normally just go in a straight direction or like a zigzag pattern of like the area that they're going on. And if they're you can honestly really easily predict this, and then set up your gear or yourself kind of in an area where they're going to pass you. And what that does is that it really makes them feel more comfortable, because they get to kind of come towards you, whereas you coming towards them, which can flush them and make them fly away and just make them feel uncomfortable. So basically the shot right here, I saw the sandpipers, that they were kind of going in a direction where if I set up like 50 100 feet in the distance, I would definitely have the chance for them to just come right past me. So they came right past me. They got within like 5 feet of me, and basically by doing this, you can get really close to your subject, and you can get really, really cool like foraging and like behavioral images like this image right here. So kind of getting into ethics here just a little bit. Another tip for shorebird photography is, if you are approaching them, you do want to approach very slow. Shorebirds are extremely skittish. Approaching even like slightly fast can easily flush them, and making them fly super fast away from you, just completely leave the beach sometimes. I personally like to army crawl or crouch walk around the beach if I spot a shorebird that I want to get a little bit closer to, just for the purpose of seeing it better or for the shot. Um, but you really never want to get within, I would say, 15 feet of one, especially during nesting season, which is what I'll get into in a second here. Um, so ethics for shorebird photography is very straightforward, in my opinion. Personally, I try to stay out of their habitat completely during breeding seasons. And if for some reason I really want to be shooting, or I'm just in the area, I'm at a beach, you want to stay very far away. So with me, I use my camera, which is a Sony A7R III with a 200 to 600 millimeter lens. And it's a very long range lens, but even sometimes that's not really enough for staying really far, just to not disturb them during nesting season. So what's awesome about the Sony is that it has a 2x teleconverter built in. So I can stay very far and have like a 1200 millimeter focal length, which then helps me to stay completely far from them, not disturbing them, um, just making sure that they don't abandon their nest, because it happens a lot actually with when people disturb these birds in their nesting season. Like not too long ago in Bolsa Chica, I believe last season, there was a drone pilot who crashed their drone into the California least tern breeding area at Bolsa Chica, and they completely abandoned all of their nests there, and it caused a very like big issue where the conservatories down there had to go collect all the eggs to try to rehabilitate them in their own facilities. But in reality, it's just always better to have these birds, be raised naturally by their parents. And it's very unfortunate that, something like that could happen. So to just keep that from happening entirely, either just avoid beaches or avoid key shorebird nesting areas during their breeding seasons. And if you really do want to observe them or see them, stay as far as possible. Just so that you keep them feeling safe and feeling just not basically just keeping them feeling safe and just not in danger at all. Um, Another reason why you really want to keep your distance is for the same reason I mentioned earlier for the disturbing hummingbirds. Shorebirds have a lot of predators, especially like hawks and falcons will prey on them quite easily. So if you flush one during nesting season, there's a very big chance that another hawk, like a hawk or a falcon, could be watching, and they'll swoop right in as soon as the shorebird's completely distracted or flushed by you. And I've seen it happen with photographers at Malibu Lagoon, where I was minding my own business, just we were all observing some birds, and some photographers on the left hand side got a little bit too close to some leaf sandpipers, and they got flushed, and a peregrine falcon grabbed one. And it was just it's really unfortunate that something like that can happen, because yes, while it is like it is like a natural cycle, but it's like an unnatural act that caused the natural cycle to occur. So it's like you don't really want to flush them, especially during breeding season. So just keeping your distance is like a very good way to just entirely like not let that happen. Um, Another thing is for us photographers here, um, not posting shorebird baby like chicks or baby photos or nesting photos during the seasons is a great way to just like prevent people from, being interested in going out and to like look for this. Because like, if you see like a really cute baby bird on your Instagram feed, you're really um you're really going to want to sort of go, like a lot of people will just like to go and see that bird, and it'll just cause like an influx of traffic into like the nesting and beach areas there. So it's just, as like a rule of thumb, just waiting to post your photos of like baby birds or birds during nesting season is just like a very good way to just keep the birds safe, keep people from having an influx of people, disrupting their habitats and things such as that. And I think that like the last shorebird ethic I want to cover is something that it's kind of your responsibility to do, is to inform everyone else who isn't as informed as you on like different like nesting, like on different like nest areas or of the groups of birds on the beach, because a lot of people who aren't like birders or photographers won't really notice the birds on the beach during different seasons. And informing these people that hey, if you play beach volleyball over like 50 feet that way, you're going to be stepping on some snowy plover chicks and some snowy plover eggs, and just informing them and letting them know that it'd be better for them to just stay where they are now and not go over there, or just warn people like, hey, watch your step as you're walking around. It's snowy plover breeding season. They're a very vulnerable bird here in California, one that we care about a lot, and we really want to see their bounce back. And just informing the general public as you're out in your birding locations is just a really great way to spread awareness and just make sure that people are just not basically disturbing the birds or damaging the birds' eggs or just doing any sort of harm to the birds. So basically that's all for my presentation for tonight. And so I do want to kind of move into like a Q&A type session here. So I believe that Aaron here is going to lead that for a second here.
Hey there, it's Emily. I'll do the Q&A part now. For Jayden, I'm looking at the comments in the chat if anyone wants to queue in some questions. I'll read them out, but I know for starters, I was just curious, especially your last topic, looking at kind of how to protect bird nests and stuff. And I was wondering how you learned about that, because that was something, I mean, I didn't really know about that, and I was a like plover docent in college, but they didn't really talk about like ethics of photography and wildlife watching and stuff. So I was wondering how that came up for you.
Yeah, so how that came up was I was sort of informed by other birders when I was birding. That was like the first kind of main way I got informed of like shorebird ethics and like the importance of keeping them, like keeping your distance and all of those other ethics things I talked about. And on top of that, actually at the Zoo Magnet program that I go to, we do have a marine science class and marine biology class where we actually did cover our native birds here that were on the coast of So like, I kind of learned from that too. So we have like a pretty heavy ethics discussion. And then on top of that too, just kind of in like the community of photographers on like different social media platforms, we do end up having conversations. Like I go to like a youth photographer meetup kind of every few weeks here, and we do like to talk about ethics and like kind of what our own viewpoints are, and we like to share and like kind of bounce off each other's ideas, and then like we all benefit from like understanding and learning like what exactly we all think about something and what we should think as like a group. So that's kind of how I learned and got into that.
Nice. And did you have a particular mentor like getting into birding, or did like join an Audubon, or was it mostly through the program that you've been working at the zoo?
So I would definitely say that I did. It was definitely through my program that I got into birding. One of my teachers is very familiar with like Audubon, with the Audubon Society, and they helped me kind of get into it. But um, I also will say like a lot. I have met a lot of like Audubon Society workers and members throughout my birding adventures and things, and they did help me get more into it by we just sat down and talked, and we went birding together for a little bit while we were out, and just that's kind of how like what really got me into like the full on birding, I guess you could say.
Nice, cool. Yeah, and someone commented, Betsy was saying, yeah, surprised that you saw cardinals in California. I didn't know that they were here. And I guess I did not know that either. I missed that photo if you'd shared it.
Yeah, so I did not get the photo of a cardinal. I wish I did, but Sepulveda Basin actually does have, I think, a pair of cardinals that are there, and I don't know how they really got there, but they have been there for a good few months now, and a lot of people do like going there to go see them because it's a really big rarity. Because the first time I actually saw a cardinal was in Chicago, so it was like that was one of my target birds there, but we do actually have some like weird, like fleeting northern cardinal populations here in California. They're just very rare and hard to find.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking about how far you'd gone to see a bird and what it was. So you've gone all the way to Chicago to find a cardinal. Have you done some other travels looking for specific species?
Yeah, so Chicago was definitely my furthest trip to go birding for sure. I went for my birthday and I went with my aunt and we went birding there at Montrose Point. But in like the Southern California area, my furthest place I'd gone was probably I did end up going to UC Santa Cruz to go visit, but I was birding up there while I was up there. So the bird I was chasing was a brown creeper, and I saw it up there for the first time, and I was very happy about it. And I did get a shot, but I did not share it in the presentation.
When you visit places like going up to Santa Cruz and stuff, do you use like rare bird alerts or look at eBird lists to kind of choose your spots? It seems like you've traveled like pretty far in Southern California.
Yeah, so eBird definitely is like what I use the most kind of, but then I will also look at like the local Audubon societies like rare bird checklists for like the week or the month, and then off of that I can kind of use eBird or like iNaturalist to like kind of triangulate where the bird was, if it's still going to be there, kind of like that's kind of how I do it. But yeah, I definitely use eBird for majority of like my birding adventures, so that's what I would use.
Yeah, if anyone else has questions, they can chime in the chat. But I guess my other questions were: is there someone you usually go birding with, or do you kind of make solo missions? Because I know, like when I was 17, I wasn't going too far from my from my house. I certainly wasn't driving from like LA to Southern California. So
Yeah, so my mother is very supportive of like my hobbies kind of, so she usually takes me. Sometimes we do kind of both go birding, but normally she just, takes me there and then she hangs out with like my dogs and my sister, and then I go out and bird just while, she's hanging out and I'm doing my own thing. And then we meet up together and I tell her what I saw, show her my pictures, and it's awesome. And I also will say that recently I did get into like for the LA Times article, I met a bunch of like blackbirders, and we are going to start doing like bird walks every few months. So that's going to be awesome. So that's like kind of my new bird group now. So I'm really happy about that.
nice, that's awesome. And we had a question, just a comment too. Nice presentation, and people are enjoying it. And suggested that you check out the Eastern Sierra or Owens Valley. If, I don't know if your mom and your dogs want to go on a longer car ride adventure, but and someone else also asking about plover conservation programs in LA, if you know about any.
So from my knowledge, there's not like a dedicated plover conservation program in Los Angeles, but there are for example, oh wait, actually I think I do understand what you're saying. Yes, there are plover conservation programs in Los Angeles. So Malibu Lagoon, honestly all of Malibu actually, and then it does kind of reach into like Oxnard Ventura area. They have the MRCA, Mountain Conservation Research Authority. What they'll do is they'll set up fencing and they'll set up signage like saying like, you know, these birds are in these areas nesting at these times, you know, please stay out of the area. They're vulnerable, endangered, so and so on. That is a program, but I can't think of like an actual like company other than like Audubon societies and MRCA. So other than that, other than like the MRCA, I think that's probably the program, if that was what your question was asking. But other than that, that's, yeah, I would say.
Cool. Yeah, and Janice had a question, might be a fun one to wrap up. If you're daydreaming about where to travel when you're not in school, if you had to pick a foreign country to go birding, do you have an exotic spot in mind?
Yeah, I have a few. I'll share a few. So my first spot I would love to go to is the Falkland Islands. There's I think 3 species of penguins there, and penguins are like my favorite bird ever. So I really want to go see like a wild penguin. And if it wasn't Falkland Islands, it would definitely be Australia. Australia just has like a completely new set of birds, and I think that's so awesome to like look into, because I looked into it a little bit because I have made like some friends in Australia, and they'll tell me it's just completely different. Like there's like just the types of birds there, it's just crazy. And so, you know, going there, I would love to see like the superb fairy wrens in Australia. If you've ever seen those are like these vibrant blue wrens that are just like so amazing. And then my last country that I would choose is probably Japan. I've always wanted to see like a Ural owl. That's kind of what I would go to Japan for sure.
Sounds good. Let's see if there's any oh yeah, someone's commenting they're penguins in New Zealand. Yeah,
Yeah, there are
we like New
penguins
Zealand.
in New Zealand. Yeah, I think they're little penguins is what they're called.
Yeah.
I have seen
Yellow.
pictures. Those are very cute.
Yeah, the little blue penguins, or the Santa Barbara Zoo if you want to cheat. But I guess you work at the zoo, so.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, it seems to be about it for the questions coming in. Was there anything else? If other people have questions to chime in, but yeah, I'm really impressed here, taking initiative to get involved in different things and start a new birding club and get involved in the zoo. Because yeah, internships are a great way to get going. We're getting comments. Teresa says thanks and wonderful presentation, and yeah, I enjoyed your perspective with photography. I think now that everyone has iPhones, we kind of cheat, but we can't get good. My shorebird pictures are like, what am I taking a picture of? Looks like a sand blob. But anyway, so we did record this presentation so people can find it again later. And Aaron put in the chat earlier the link to the article. So you are famous if we Google you in the future. But yeah, that's about it. And anyway, so yeah, the program will be recorded online for future reference. And the Audubon takes a break for summer, so here our last presentation for a while, and the next one's coming up September 25th. So
September 25th.
keep an eye and follow other Audubons. I'm sure they also have programs as well. But thank you so much for joining us and answering all my questions too. I thought I was very impressed. So I'm a newer birder too. So. And was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, thank you so much. I think Teresa has a brief about when it will be posted, and it's pretty quick. David turns it around fairly quickly, so I think should be within a few days, I think, at most.
Great. Well, thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you so much for letting me have this opportunity.